For less than $2, you can permanently kill every weed on your driveway, your patio, your garden beds, and your sidewalk cracks. Every single one, dead in under 24 hours. No toxic chemicals, no plastic jugs from the garden center, no glyphosate soaking into your soil, poisoning your dog's paws, and leaching into the groundwater beneath your home. $2. A mixture you can make in 60 seconds in your kitchen. And right now, a multi-billion-dollar chemical empire is spending millions of dollars in lobbying money, in advertising budgets, and in regulatory influence to make absolutely sure you never, ever find this out. Because the moment you do, you will never spend another dime on their poison again. That is not a theory. That is not a conspiracy. That is a documented business strategy. And today, we are blowing the whole thing wide open. Welcome to the Buried Blueprint. I'm glad you found this channel, because what we do here is simple. We dig up the solutions that corporations have spent decades burying, the formulas that can't be patented, the methods that can't generate quarterly earnings, the knowledge that belongs to every homeowner in America, but has been systematically hidden in the name of profit. If that matters to you, if you believe that knowledge should be free, then hit subscribe right now and ring that notification bell. Because every single video on this channel is another page from the playbook they don't want you to read. Hit subscribe. Do it now, before we go any further. Because what's coming later in this video is going to change the way you look at your garden center forever. Now, let's go back. Let's go back to a time before Bayer, before Monsanto, before laboratory synthesized molecules with names you cannot pronounce were being sold to American families as the only way to kill a dandelion. Let's go back to the early 20th century, to the men who built and maintained the railroads that connected this nation from coast to coast. These were not chemists. These were not scientists with PhDs and lab coats. These were working men with a problem. Miles and miles of railroad tracks, surrounded by vegetation that, if left unchecked, would push through gravel, destabilize ties, and compromise the entire infrastructure of a line. They needed those tracks clear. They needed a solution that was cheap, effective, scalable across thousands of miles, and above all, they needed something that worked. And they found it. Industrial salt and acidic compounds, poured directly onto the soil along the tracks, mixed in proportions that would draw every molecule of moisture out of any plant that dared to grow there. Crews would walk the lines and apply this mixture by hand, and the result was immediate, total, and long-lasting vegetation death, without poisoning the crews, without contaminating rivers, without leaving behind residues that would persist for decades in the soil. This method worked so well that versions of it were used throughout both world wars to maintain supply routes and clear fields of fire around military installations. It was practical, it was powerful, it was cheap, and it worked every single time. By the 1960s, agricultural workers across the American South and Midwest were using variations of vinegar-based soil treatments to manage weed pressure in areas where they didn't want to use tillage. Home gardeners passed these recipes down through generations. It was common knowledge, the kind that lived in handwritten notes tucked inside old almanacs and passed between neighbors over fences. This knowledge was alive, it was working, and it was free. Then came the 1970s, and everything changed. In 1974, Monsanto introduced glyphosate to the commercial market under the brand name Roundup. It was marketed as a revolutionary breakthrough in weed control. A systemic herbicide, meaning it didn't just kill what it touched on the surface. It traveled through the vascular system of the plant, from the leaf all the way down to the root, and it worked. Nobody is denying that it worked. But here's the question they never wanted you to ask. Why did we need it? Why did an entire generation of homeowners suddenly need a laboratory-engineered neurotoxin to kill a dandelion when salt and vinegar had been doing the job since before their grandparents were born? The answer is not science. The answer is not safety. The answer is one word: patent. Glyphosate is a patented synthetic molecule. That means Monsanto owned it. They owned the formula. They owned the production. They owned the supply chain. Every single bottle of Roundup that left a store shelf generated proprietary revenue that a simple mixture of white vinegar and Epsom salt could never, ever provide. You cannot patent vinegar. You cannot patent salt. You cannot build a recurring quarterly revenue stream on something any homeowner can buy for $2 and mix in their own kitchen. So instead, they built a marketing machine. They flooded the airwaves with advertising telling American families that their gardens were under siege from dangerous invasive plants. They convinced the public that killing a weed was a complex technical challenge requiring professional-grade chemistry. They put their products on every shelf of every garden center in every suburb in America. And they quietly, systematically, allowed the old knowledge to fade, to be forgotten, to be replaced. And it worked. Today, American homeowners spend over $2 billion every single year on synthetic herbicides. $2 billion annually. On products that have now been linked in federal court cases to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in humans. Products that the World Health Organization has classified as probable carcinogens. Products that persist in soil for months and have been detected in the groundwater of communities across this country. Products that, according to peer-reviewed environmental studies, are directly associated with declines in pollinator populations, including bees, the single most important creature in the agricultural food chain. $2 billion a year spent on poison, when the solution has been sitting in your pantry this entire time for $2. That is the corporate betrayal. And now you know it. Before I give you the exact formula, I need to tell you something important. What you are learning today about herbicides is not an isolated case. This is a pattern. A documented, recurring pattern of the chemical and home improvement industries suppressing affordable, effective solutions to protect proprietary products. The mold remediation industry does it. The rust-proofing industry does it. The wood preservation industry does it. We have been documenting all of it. And if you want access to the full archive, the complete collection of buried formulas, forgotten recipes, and suppressed DIY solutions across every category of home maintenance and survival preparedness, then the link in the description below takes you directly to the complete buried blueprint vault. Dozens of guides, classified knowledge, all of it organized and waiting for you. Go check that link, save it, bookmark it. But stay right here, because exactly how you apply this changes everything. The formula alone is not enough. The application method is what separates a dead weed from a weed that comes back in 2 weeks. So do not skip the next section. Let's talk science, because this is where the $2 formula becomes genuinely astonishing. Commercial herbicides like glyphosate work systemically, meaning they mimic amino acids inside the plant's cellular structure and disrupt a specific enzyme pathway called the EPSPS pathway. They essentially starve the plant from the inside over a period of days or weeks. That sounds impressive, but here is the problem with that approach. It requires precise molecular dosing. It requires the plant to absorb the compound and transport it internally. It leaves active chemical residue in the soil for an extended period. And it requires a patented synthetic molecule that costs you $14 a bottle. The $2 formula works through a completely different and, in many ways, far more brutal mechanism. Rapid physical desiccation. The active agent in white distilled vinegar is acetic acid. When acetic acid makes contact with the surface of a plant leaf, it immediately attacks and breaks down the protective waxy cuticle layer, which is the plant's first and primary defense against moisture loss. The moment that cuticle is compromised, the plant is exposed and vulnerable. That is where the dish soap enters. Liquid dish soap functions as a surfactant, which means it dramatically reduces the surface tension of the liquid mixture. Without a surfactant, a water-based solution would bead up on the waxy leaf surface and roll off. With dish soap, the mixture spreads out and penetrates into every microscopic pore and stomata opening across the entire surface area of the leaf. Every single pore is now soaking in acetic acid. And then, the Epsom salt activates. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate, and when it is introduced to a plant's cellular environment through compromised tissue, it triggers extreme osmotic pressure. Osmosis is the movement of water across a membrane from areas of lower concentration to higher concentration. The high salt concentration in this mixture creates an aggressive osmotic gradient that literally pulls the water out of the plant's cells, through the damaged cuticle, and into the external environment. The plant essentially bleeds its own moisture out through its skin. The cells collapse, the vascular system fails, the weed dehydrates completely from the outside in, and it does this within hours, not days. Under direct sunlight, where UV radiation accelerates the surface temperature of the leaf and speeds evaporation, this process can result in visible browning and wilting within 3 to 4 hours of application. By sunset, the weed is dead, not suppressed, not weakened, dead. That is not marketing language. That is basic plant biology. Now here is the exact formula, and I want you to listen carefully because the ratios matter and the source materials matter. Go to any grocery store or hardware store and buy regular white distilled vinegar. Standard 5% acidity, the kind that costs about $2 for a gallon. This is important. Do not buy apple cider vinegar. Do not buy cleaning vinegar unless it is also labeled as safe for garden use. Do not buy any vinegar product that has added fragrances, colors, or cleaning agents. Plain, standard, white distilled vinegar, 5% acidity, $2, done. Next, buy Epsom salt, which is magnesium sulfate. You can find it in the pharmacy section of any grocery store or in the garden section of any hardware store. A small bag costs between $2 and $4 and will last you an entire season. Again, plain Epsom salt. No scents, no added ingredients. Finally, standard liquid dish soap. The blue bottle, the yellow bottle, the kind under your sink right now. Any plain liquid dish soap works. You only need a tablespoon. Now, the mixing process. Take a standard 1-gallon garden pump sprayer, pour in the full gallon of white vinegar, add 1 full cup of Epsom salt directly into the vinegar, add 1 tablespoon of liquid dish soap, put the cap on the sprayer and shake it firmly for 30 seconds until you can see that the salt has fully dissolved into the solution. Your formula is ready. Timing your application is critical. Do not spray this on a cloudy day. Do not spray it in the morning when there is dew on the leaves. You want to apply this formula at the hottest, brightest, most direct sunlight point of the day, typically between 11 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. The combination of acetic acid, osmotic salt stress, and solar UV radiation creates a compounding desiccation effect that is dramatically more powerful than any single mechanism alone. You want the sun working with you. Apply the spray directly to the leaves and stems of the weeds. Saturate them. Make sure every surface is coated. You do not need to drench the soil. The goal is leaf contact. For weeds growing up through driveway cracks or patio pavers, apply generously to the entire visible plant. One important safety note. This formula is non-selective, which means it will kill any plant it touches, including grass, garden plants, and flowers. Apply carefully and deliberately. Use a targeted spray stream rather than a wide mist when working near plants you want to keep. Avoid applying on windy days. And while this mixture is non-toxic and safe around pets once dried, avoid direct contact with your eyes during mixing and application. Standard precautions. Be sensible. You may need a second application for particularly large or deeply rooted perennial weeds after 48 hours. For crabgrass, dandelions, and most common invasive broadleaf weeds in driveways and patios, a single application in direct sunlight is sufficient. And now let's talk about what this really means in dollar terms, because that is where the true weight of this conversation lands. The average American homeowner spends between $150 and $300 every single year on commercial herbicide products. Those with larger properties, long driveways, expansive patios, or persistent weed pressure spend considerably more. Professional weed treatment services, the kind you see advertised on lawn care trucks in every neighborhood, charge anywhere from $80 to $200 per visit, and they recommend quarterly applications. That is potentially $800 a year just to keep your driveway looking clean. $800. Paid to a company that shows up with a tank of glyphosate, sprays your property in 10 minutes, and charges you for the privilege of soaking your soil in a probable carcinogen. You just learned how to do the same job, better, faster, and without a single toxic molecule, for $2. $2 for a gallon of vinegar, a few cents worth of dish soap, a couple of dollars for a bag of Epsom salt that will last you the entire growing season. The total cost of a full season of weed control on an average property using this formula is under $5. The chemical industry prays every single morning that you never do that math. They have spent 50 years and billions of dollars in advertising, in lobbying, and in controlling the narrative around home and garden care to make absolutely certain that the distance between you and this knowledge stays as wide as possible. Because the moment homeowners across this country realize that the solution to their biggest yard problem costs $2 and lives in their kitchen pantry, the entire synthetic herbicide market collapses. And they know it. So here is what I'm asking you to do. Not for me, for yourself, for your neighbors. For the people in your life who are still buying those $14 plastic jugs every spring and summer and fall, poisoning their soil, exposing their kids and their pets, and funneling money into a corporate machine that has actively worked against their health and their wallet for decades. Share this video, send it to someone right now, post it, save it. The act of sharing this information is the act of taking that knowledge back from the people who stole it. Hit subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another buried formula, because there are dozens more where this came from. The next blueprint opens soon, and what's inside is even heavier.